During the closing months of 2009, a family residing in Oklahoma vanished under suspicious circumstances, leaving little clue as to what had happened to them. When evidence of their tragic fate did eventually surface 5 years later, it only prompted further questions as to what exactly had transpired, rather than providing any useful answers. Join us as we attempt to unravel what really happened to the Jamison family. Many of the bizarre happenings and mysterious events we have previously explored on Bedtime Stories took place decades or even centuries ago. As a result, the case materials that might have aided a modern investigator were largely non-existent, leaving gaps in the evidence that can never be bridged. In today's world, it has become increasingly rare for a high-profile tragedy or violent crime to remain completely unsolved for an extended period. Advances in forensic science such as DNA testing have significantly improved the ability to track offenders. Combined with the near-ubiquitous presence of CCTV cameras and the ever-evolving capabilities of mobile phone technology, it's almost impossible for an offender to commit a serious crime without leaving some form of trace evidence behind. And yet, despite these technological advancements, there are still a small number of disappearances and murders that continue to defy explanation, even after extensive investigations have been conducted. These cases remain shrouded in mystery, with law enforcement and independent researchers alike struggling to piece together exactly what might have happened. Each one generates multiple competing theories, with different interpretations of the same evidence, leading investigators down slightly diverging paths. The truth behind such cases likely lies somewhere within the spaces between these various theories, obscured by missing evidence that prevents a full understanding of what truly transpired. Without these crucial details, speculation continues to grow and definitive answers remain elusive. This is certainly the case with one particularly haunting disappearance that unfolded in Oklahoma, one that ultimately ended in both a heartbreaking and perplexing manner. This is the case of Bobby and Sherilyn Jamison, along with their 6-year-old daughter, Madison. To the outside world, they appeared to be an ordinary American family, living in a quiet, unassuming rural setting, seemingly planning for a long and happy future together. Yet, beneath the surface, they were contending with an unknown danger, a danger they had managed to keep completely hidden from those around them. Today's video is sponsored by Aura. So I read the other day that Bank of America announced another data breach, but what's unsettling is that they didn't tell anyone for months. I'm told a company takes an average of 277 days to report a breach, and Bank of America wasn't the only major bank to announce breaches last year. Your bank could be breached right now and you won't know until your data's been exposed for almost a year. How do you feel about giving criminals a 9-month head start? That's why it's important to talk about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura alerts me if my phone number, email, or national insurance number are on the dark web. They let me know quickly if anyone tries to use information to access my credit or bank accounts. You'll learn about it before one of these companies are forced to notify you. I highly recommend you give it a try. The only thing most of these companies are going to do to help is to offer free credit monitoring. After the fact. That's like installing security cameras after your house gets robbed. If you haven't been a victim of fraud yet, why keep rolling the dice? Let Aura do the work. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to these data breaches, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/bedtimestories to try 2 weeks for free. In October 2009, Bobby Jamison and his wife Sherilyn made the decision to leave their home in the eastern Oklahoman city of Eufaula. After viewing several potential properties, they ultimately decided not to buy an existing house, but instead to purchase a 40-acre plot of undeveloped land just outside the neighbouring town of Red Oak. This marked a new chapter for their family, as they hoped to create a simpler life away from the bustle of the city in a quieter and more secluded setting where they could pursue their dream of self-sufficiency. The Jamison family already owned a small patch of land where they had placed a large storage container. Bobby had told friends and family that their plan was to move the container to their newly acquired acreage and convert it into a temporary shelter. This would allow them to live on site whilst they used the proceeds from their current house sale to build a permanent home. Though this plan seemed unconventional, it reflected their determination to embrace a new way of life, where they could live independently and work towards building a future for themselves and their young daughter. On the morning of the 8th of October, the family packed their belongings into their pickup truck and set off on the 30-mile journey across the county line to Red Oak, hoping to finalise the land purchase. However, when they failed to return home that evening, no immediate concern was raised. Neither Bobby nor Sherilyn had been employed for some time, and their movements were not as predictable as those of other residents. But as the days passed, and they began missing multiple prearranged meetings and visits, their friends and family began to grow concerned, realizing something was amiss. Then, on the afternoon of the 16th of October, a group of hunters in a remote wooded area near the town of Kinter came across the Jamisons' pickup truck. The vehicle was locked, parked, and apparently abandoned, with no sign of its occupants. Inside, they made a heart-wrenching discovery. The family dog was still in the vehicle, malnourished and visibly distressed, clearly having been left without food or water for days. Authorities were alerted, and responding deputies forced entry into the vehicle to rescue the starving pet. Upon searching the truck, they discovered several puzzling items: Bobby's wallet, Sherilyn's purse, a mobile phone, and a GPS device. Investigators examined the GPS data, which revealed that their last significant stop was a small hill nearby, not far from where the truck had been discovered. Bobby's phone, when checked, revealed a photograph of Madison which had been taken a day before their disappearance, whilst they were still at home. Despite the eerie nature of the abandoned vehicle, there were no signs of struggle or violence. No damage to the truck, no blood, and no indication of a confrontation. However, one item found beneath the driver's seat raised serious questions: a small bag containing $32,000 in cash. For those who knew the Jamisons, this discovery was deeply troubling. The family had been facing financial difficulties, and neither Bobby nor Sherilyn had any known access to such a substantial sum of money. The questions were raised: where had it come from, and why had they left it behind untouched? As investigations continued, more unsettling queries emerged. The presence of the cash and the absence of any signs of violence suggested that the family's disappearance was not simply a case of a random crime or accident. There was something more to their story. With each new piece of evidence, the mystery only deepened, and the case became one of the most perplexing disappearances in the region. Tracking back along the coordinates displayed by the GPS device found in the truck, police made their way to the top of the hill that had been identified. It was here that they located traces of footprints pressed into the ground, though most had unfortunately begun to degrade over time, making it difficult to gather any meaningful evidence. The degradation of the prints made them less reliable, but they still provided some indication that the family had been present at this location. A further search of the area surrounding the prints yielded no further clues. The following day, a more structured and coordinated search effort was organised, with a clear plan to cover a wider area. Over the next week, deputies employed a helicopter and tracker dogs to scour the surrounding woodland, assisted by up to 300 local volunteers. Despite the massive effort from the community, no trace of the missing family members was found, and the search was ultimately and reluctantly scaled back. Whilst this massive search effort had been underway, investigators and forensic experts turned their attention to the family's home and surrounding property. It was then that a bizarre and disturbing discovery was made. This related to a patch of fresh graffiti painted onto the side of the Jamison storage container, which had vague references to witches and cats. The presence of this graffiti only deepened the mystery. Further investigation into the family's belongings revealed that only 2 items seemed to be missing from inside the house: a large suitcase and a .22 caliber handgun. Neither of these items were found in the pickup truck, nor were they visible in the CCTV footage showing Bobby and his family leaving their home a week earlier. Whilst there was nothing overtly unusual about their actions in the footage, the investigators noted a few oddities in the way the family moved. Bobby and Sherilyn were observed walking back and forth in a strangely methodical manner, moving in silence and not acknowledging one another. There were several moments when they seemed to lapse into a trance-like state, standing completely still and staring into space for a few seconds. At other times, they would pack something only to remove it from the vehicle and return it to the house, then bring it back to the pickup truck later. This happened on several occasions. This eerie behaviour only added to the growing sense of unease, making it more difficult to understand the circumstances surrounding their disappearance. A major sticking point for the investigation was the large amount of cash discovered hidden in the truck. Bobby had not been seen carrying the money in question at any time on the house CCTV. None of the family members recognised the bag or its contents, further deepening the enigma. Some speculated that it could have been intended as a down payment for the land the Jamisons were planning to purchase, but those who knew them well were sceptical. Both Bobby and Sherilyn were unemployed and living on disability benefits at the time, so the appearance of such a large sum of money was completely out of character. A thorough examination of the Jamisons' financial records revealed no substantial deposits or withdrawals in the months leading up to their disappearance. One possibility which was considered suggested that the money could have been part of a settlement from a car accident that Bobby had been involved in. However, no formal payout documentation was ever found, despite an extensive investigation into his past. As the weeks and months rolled by, rumours regarding family disputes and unresolved grudges surfaced, but none of them led to any new concrete information. The case seemed to have hit a dead end. Then, just over 4 years after the Jamison family's disappearance, part of the mystery surrounding their fate was finally solved. Tragically, the resolution came in the most heartbreaking and unexpected way possible, and it would not be the absolution that many were hoping for, as it left numerous queries unresolved. On the afternoon of the 16th of November 2013, 3 sets of skeletal remains were discovered in the same wooded area where the Jamisons' pickup truck had previously been found. The site lay approximately 3 miles beyond the original police search perimeter, in rugged, overgrown terrain that had not been thoroughly explored during earlier efforts. Though badly degraded due to years of exposure to the elements, the remains were still sufficient to determine that they belonged to 2 fully grown adults and a small child. Their positioning suggested that they had not been moved after death, and all 3 were found lying close together, as if they had remained side by side in their final moments. Further analysis of clothing fragments and DNA evidence soon confirmed beyond any doubt that the bodies were indeed those of the missing family. Due to the significant decomposition and the extensive evidence of animal scavenging, the state medical examiner faced considerable difficulty in establishing the exact circumstances of their deaths. The autopsies, conducted by Dr. Joshua Lanter, revealed no clear signs of external violence. There were no fractures, bullet wounds, or other indications of physical trauma that could have accounted for their fate. Similarly, there were no traces of toxins, disease, or any other apparent medical condition that could explain what had happened to them. With so little physical evidence to work from, Dr. Lanter could only conclude that the case remained deeply suspicious, but no definitive cause of death could be recorded. When questioned by the media, the Latimer County Sheriff's Office stated that they believed the deaths were most likely the result of misadventure. In the days immediately following the family's disappearance, the area had experienced unusually heavy rainfall, which could have made navigation even more challenging. Bobby Jamison was not known to be an experienced hunter or outdoorsman, nor did he appear to have made any preparations for a long hike or overnight stay. They had taken no camping gear, warm clothing, or food supplies with them, suggesting that they had never intended to spend an extended period outdoors. It was suggested that he, Sherilyn, and Madison may have wandered from their vehicle on foot, possibly for a short walk, only to become disorientated or trapped by the worsening weather. Without proper supplies or a working mobile phone, they may have been unable to find their way back, gradually succumbing to exposure and hypothermia. However, whilst this explanation seemed reasonable enough for law enforcement, those closest to the Jamisons immediately voiced their doubts, insisting that there were just too many loose ends. Although the rainfall which had affected the area had indeed been heavy, there had been few reports of any localized flooding, and the overnight temperatures had not dropped to anywhere near freezing. Similarly, it should not have been difficult for Bobby or Sherilyn to have left the other parent behind to care for Madison whilst they walked the 3 or 4 miles back to the pickup, even in poor weather. There was no indication that either adult had suffered from any medical condition that would have prevented them from making such a journey, nor was there any evidence to suggest that they had even attempted to do so. Had he been aware of the life-changing amount of money that was lying in his vehicle, Bobby's relatives believed there was no way at all that he would have willingly left it unattended for any period of time. Not to mention the fact that their dog, a cherished part of the family, was also locked inside the vehicle and left in distress. It was the family's firm suspicion that unknown persons had halted the Jamisons' pickup up on the hill and then removed the 3 occupants by force, later taking them off and executing them in the nearby woods. But exactly who these third parties might be and their precise motives for wanting to cause harm to the family has never been convincingly explained. Roughly 6 months before he disappeared, Bobby had filed a restraining order against his 67-year-old father, Bob Dean Jamison. His decision to do so had in essence torn the wider Jamison family apart, with some relatives siding with the elder of the two, and others, including Bobby's uncle, joining the lawsuit. In the court filings, Bobby alleged that his father was actively involved with local methamphetamine producers and criminal biker gangs, and that he had personally been threatened with violence on numerous occasions. If true, this information raises the prospect that Bobby and his family may have fallen foul of his father's associates. However, no concrete link between Bob Dean Jamison's alleged activities and the deaths of his son's family has ever been officially established. Other theories are that Bobby could have been pressed or blackmailed into working for his father, and that the family deaths were the result of a drug deal gone wrong. Those who believe this point to the odd behaviour and trance-like movements that were on display in the CCTV footage of the missing couple. They argue that this conduct may be the result of the pair having fallen into the use of illegal drugs, meaning that their decision-making could have been severely impaired at that time. But whilst this argument is feasible, it does seem something of a stretch that either parent would knowingly choose to risk the safety of their 6-year-old daughter during an interaction with an organised crime gang. Delving further into this theory, it then seems even less feasible that the criminals involved in the incident would leave such a large amount of money in the vehicle after they had taken the time to move it down from the hill. It is perhaps more believable that the family may have inadvertently and innocently stumbled across some form of illicit enterprise hidden away in the woods and then been murdered in an effort to keep this practice a secret. This opens up the door to a far more bizarre and haunting explanation for what exactly might have transpired. Some people close to Sherilyn Jamison have alleged that she may have been a member of a satanic organization, or at the very least had possessed an unhealthy obsession with the occult. The presence of the bizarre graffiti which made reference to witchcraft and animal sacrifice painted onto the side of the Jamison storage container has been cited as possible evidence to support this theory. Some believe that Sherilyn had taken a deep interest in supernatural practices, which may have drawn unwanted attention to her and her family. Some form of satanic manual or witchcraft Bible was apparently recovered from the Jamison household by investigating officers. And while Sherilyn's close friend, Nikki Shenhold, would later go on record as stating that one of the couple had purchased the book for the other as a joke, others were not so sure. Connie Kokatan, Sherilyn's mother, told investigators that she had been approached by an unknown female during the period that the family was still reported as missing. This woman had told Connie that she was a member of a satanic cult that operated across the state, and that Sherilyn's name was featured on a kill list which the cult leader held in their possession. If true, this would suggest that the family may have been targeted by dangerous individuals involved in occult practices. There are also suggestions that a lengthy personal letter was recovered by the sheriff's department from inside the abandoned pickup. Purportedly written by Sherilyn and being up to 11 pages in length, it presented itself as an intention or declaration by her to kill Bobby for having somehow ruined their family. Whilst it is not impossible that the Jamisons may have died as a result of some form of murder-suicide event instigated by one of the couple, the available evidence would strongly suggest otherwise. There was no trace of any weapon or other instrument that could be used to end a life found near the bodies or inside the abandoned vehicle. This makes it problematic to suggest that one person murdered the other two and then went on to take their own life, somehow managing to conceal the mechanism they had used to do this in the process. Furthermore, no traces of gunshot residue, blood spatter, or any other indications of violence were located at the scene, leaving investigators doubtful of both this theory and the drug-related scenarios we previously mentioned. It is the conflicting mix of both plausibility and uncertainty found within each of these theories that secures the Jamison family's case alongside other notorious disappearances. Every hypothesis contains just enough supporting detail to prevent it from being entirely disregarded by those who advocate for it. And yet, at the same time, there remains insufficient evidence for each argument to be completely convincing, leaving multiple suggestions carrying an equally frustrating degree of doubt and speculation. After examining each of the numerous scenarios proposed regarding the fate of the Jamison family, it remains impossible to identify one single explanation as the most probable. However, what all these theories do share is the suggestion that there were underlying issues within the family unit, problems that had been carefully concealed from the outside world. These hidden struggles paint a picture of a family in turmoil, possibly more complex than anyone had realized. It is likely that certain relatives, close friends, or associates may have been aware of these struggles, but either chose to withhold information from authorities or were pressured into remaining silent. This is particularly frustrating, as even the smallest withheld detail could very well be the missing piece needed to finally unravel the truth behind the family's tragic fate. Secrets left untold create an ever-deepening enigma surrounding their disappearance. The extent of Bobby Jamison's involvement in criminal activity or illicit dealings may never be fully understood, yet it likely played a significant role in the events of October 2009. Equally, the presence of their 6-year-old daughter Madison and her vulnerability may have ultimately sealed their fate in ways that investigators have yet to determine. Her presence in the unfolding tragedy adds another layer of complexity. Perhaps Madison became ill or injured whilst walking, leaving her parents unwilling to abandon her, which led to all three succumbing to the elements. Alternatively, if unknown third parties were involved, the threat to Madison's life may have been the very thing that prevented Bobby and Sherilyn from attempting to escape or call for help, ensuring that none of them survived. They may have felt trapped in a horrifying situation they couldn't control. Tragically, unless someone with vital knowledge of what truly happened comes forward, the deaths of the Jamison family will likely remain unsolved. Their case serves as a sobering reminder that despite the advancements in forensic science, surveillance, and investigative techniques, some mysteries still elude explanation. Even the best efforts by law enforcement can fall short when key information is missing. In the modern world, there are places where technology reaches its limits, where chilling secrets remain buried, prolonging the anguish of those left behind. The unresolved nature of the Jamisons' deaths leaves a lasting impact on everyone who knew them. May their souls rest in everlasting peace. Bedtime stories.